my name is Elizabeth and welcome back to the Hourly. Today is my January wrap-up for the month. I usually do weekly wrap-ups, but because of the Young Adult Booktube Awards, I was very busy and I just didn't have time. I took kind of a break from recording so I could do all of those live shows and organize that. It takes a lot of work to organize a bunch of judges, so I took a little bit of a break. So I'm sorry if this wrap-up is going to be ridiculously long. I read 15 books in January. I'm very proud of myself. I'm in the middle of another book right now. So let's go ahead and get started because I have so much to talk to you guys about. The first book that I read is The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. It is definitely my favorite of the 2 Nicola Yoon books that I've read so far, and I really enjoyed this. This is a diverse read. Both of our main characters are people of color, and I really enjoyed that. I love that this takes place in the course of one day. It's just very exciting, and I love the love story in this. It's just, oh my god, I mean, it is a little bit of insta-love because it does take place in the course of one day, but I really feel like these 2 characters have so much chemistry that it just makes sense and it's not really too tropey. I love that this has little snippets. There's like little chapters about the strangers that our 2 main characters meet throughout the story, and at the end of the story everything kind of wraps up and they all connect in some way, and I really thought that was just so good. This is about a Jamaican immigrant who is having to try to figure out or save her family from getting deported. Later that night, her family is supposed to leave to get deported back to Jamaica, and she's trying to kind of just solve this problem that she's having with not wanting to be deported. So she's trying to go through that, and then along the way she meets a boy, and it's so swoony, and I love it, and it's written so well. Nicola Yoon is a fantastic author, and I really enjoyed this book. Then I read A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This is my first Patrick Ness book, and I really enjoyed it. I love how magical this story seems like it's written, and it's got kind of like a magical realism effect in there, and I love how you kind of get to guess whether or not the monster in the story is real or it's just a figment of the boy's imagination. And I went into this not really knowing much about the story, which I really feel like you should do. Basically all you should really know is that there's a boy and there's a monster, and then, you know, stuff happens. So, and it's not like a scary monster. Like, this is not a scary book. It is kind of like a dark and sad book. I definitely cried, bawled my eyes out there at the end of the book and the movie, which were both fantastic. Just the way that you get the imagery in your head and then the little pictures that they have throughout the story really make everything flow so nicely, and this is just an amazing book. Everyone should read it. Then I picked up Replica by Lauren Oliver. This was actually one of the books voted for the science fiction and dystopian categories, and this is a little bit of both. It's a little bit science fiction, a little bit dystopian, just a little bit, just very little bit. It has kind of more of a dystopian feel. It's not really like what you would expect from a dystopian society, but I did have a couple problems with this book. The main one being that the flip perspective, where you have to like flip the book upside down in order to read the next chapter or whatever. If you want to do that, I mean, you can read all of Lyra's story and then all of Gemma's story, but I do not recommend that. I recommend reading chapter by chapter, because I know several people who have said that they read Lyra's story and then Gemma's story, and they just felt like they already knew what was happening. And I can totally relate to that. I just can't reread stories, especially like back to back. Like if I were to read a book and then read it again right after that, that's what I feel like this book would be like. Because basically you get, you know, the beginning of the story, the 2 main characters aren't really together, so they're different, very different stories. But by the middle of the book, the exact same thing is kind of happening to them, and you really feel like you already know what's going on. I mean, even with me reading chapter by chapter, I kind of wanted to skim through a lot of Gemma's chapter because she's the one that I would read second, and I really didn't enjoy that, and I kind of felt like the characters were very flat. So I did have problems with this book. I think I ended up rating it like a 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't bad, but it definitely didn't wow me. It wasn't what I wanted out of this book at all either. Don't take it off of your TBR if you were really interested in reading this. Definitely give it a shot. And like I said, I really recommend reading Lyra's chapter, Gemma chapter, Lyra chapter, Gemma chapter, like that, or even Gemma and then Lyra, Gemma and then Lyra, whatever. But go chapter by chapter. Don't read one story and then the other. I don't think it's a very good way to read the story, in my opinion. Then I read The Unexpected Everything by Morgan Matson. This is the only book of the month that I DNF'd, thank goodness. It was just, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I think I read to like 25 to 50%. I don't remember exactly where. I know I read at least 25%, but I definitely didn't read 50%. So, but it was just like the school-age high school drama just wasn't my thing. And then the synopsis of the book tells us that the main character, her dad is a politician, and her dad gets fired from being a politician, or takes a leave of absence because of some scandal that he goes through, and because of that, she loses her summer-long internship. So in order to have something on her resume for college, she takes up dog walking as kind of like a summer job, and all of that takes place in like the first 200 pages. And so like that's everything the synopsis tells you that happens. Like the synopsis tells you that her dad's a politician, her dad loses her job, she loses her internship, she has to take up dog walking. Like the synopsis tells you those things, but it takes 200 pages to get to what you don't know. And that's what really bothered me. Like the whole first 200 pages, I'm just like, I know this already. I know this already. Can we just get to the rest of the story? And it was just super frustrating for me, and I was not with it. If you're not a fan of contemporary, don't read this. But if you like contemporary, a lot of my friends who are really big contemporary lovers, I know, loved this book. So don't take it off your TBR just yet. Then I read It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, and I enjoyed this book, but I do have to say that there are trigger warnings for emotional and physical abuse, and I recognize that. I do think that Colleen Hoover, from what I've heard, did a better job with this book dealing with domestic violence than her past books. So, and I like that the main character definitely had a sense of female empowerment. You know, there was instances of making excuses for the person that was physically abusing her, but I liked the ending. I thought that the ending was exactly what it needed to be, and I like how it tied in the title, and I just really enjoyed this story, and I think Colleen Hoover did a decent job of it. Now, I do have to say I haven't read her other books, and I do know that a lot of people say that her other books are way more problematic than this one, so just keep that in mind if you're interested in reading any of Colleen Hoover's novels, that a lot of them have to do with pretty problematic situations with domestic violence. Then I read Monstrous, which is by Marjorie Liu, I believe, and this graphic novel was very unremarkable. It's not very memorable. It's not very memorable either. Like, I remember enjoying it as I was reading it. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, but having read it a couple of weeks ago, I just don't remember what I liked about it. I don't remember what I didn't like about it. I don't remember what I thought of the characters. So, I mean, I think I remember I really liked the art. The art style was very good, and I liked kind of like the color scheme that they have going on with this. It's very like neutral colors, and it kind of gives like a dark feel to the story. But I don't really remember the plot or anything like that. So I can't really tell you much about this. I know it's about a main character who has some sort of dark magical power that she necessarily can't control. But more than that, I don't really know. So I don't remember. I mean, I guess that speaks volumes for the fact that I don't really remember what I did or didn't like about this story. Then I read Odyssey by Matt Fraction, and I did not enjoy this one at all. I think I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. This is a retelling in graphic novel form about the Odyssey. And I don't remember who that's written by, some Greek or Roman guy. I don't remember. It's a classic. And I just didn't enjoy it. It was the writing style. It was written very old-fashionedly. I think they were trying to like keep with the feel of it being a Greek or Roman story. I don't remember what the Odyssey is. I want to say it's Greek, but I couldn't tell you. So I just didn't enjoy the way that it was written, and the art style was very loud, very out there, very colorful, and a lot of people really enjoy that, but for me, it just wasn't, I wasn't feeling it, and it might, you know, I think with a different story, I might have really liked this art style, but the story, I just was like, oh, and I guess something else that I should mention is that all the main characters are female. Like, there's no men in this world, because it's like space. It's like the Odyssey in space. So I guess if you're interested in reading something that has all female characters, like, I don't remember why there's no men in this world, but there's no men, and the women can reproduce together. And so I thought that was kind of interesting, but just the way that the book was written just was like, I didn't like it. It sucked. It's not my thing, but give it a try and let me know if you guys like it in the comments. And then I read The Wicked and the Divine by Karen Gillian, I think is how you pronounce her name. This is volume 2, and I remember really disliking volume 1. But I like this volume a little bit more. This is about 12 teenagers that become gods, and this is like a thing in this alternate universe of our universe, is that every 90 years, these teenagers, it might not even be 12. I don't know why I think 12. Maybe that's like a Greek mythology thing. But it's like some of the teenagers become gods. It's like every year, it's like 90 years this happens, and they only live for 3 years. None of them live past 3 years after they become gods, and it's kind of just about their journey and how famous they are, and it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. I feel like most people either love this story or hate it. The art style is great. I think it's good for beginner graphic novel readers. It definitely has a lot of adult content, drugs and sex and nakedness and all those things. So beware of that. But it is a decent graphic novel for those of you trying to get into graphic novels. It's very easy to read with the panels and everything. But I just, it's okay. The second one I didn't like, but the first one I didn't like, but the second one I liked a little bit more. So I think I'm gonna read volume 3. If I don't like that one, or if it's middle of the road, then I'll just DNF this series. But I'm gonna give it a try just because the storyline is interesting and has intrigued me. And I picked up The Rose and the Dagger by Renee Ahdieh. Love this series. I love the romance. I love the writing style. Renee Ahdieh has the most like descriptive, beautiful writing I've ever read. Like I just love how she explains things, and you can just see it in your mind's eye, and like the imagination that she, like the imagery that she gives you. It's all so good. I just love it. I think that her writing style is probably one of my favorites of all time when it comes to like descriptions and the high fantasy aspect. I didn't really understand how the magic worked occasionally with this story. You kind of just have to accept that there's magic, and that's really it with this kind of story. But for some people who really need to understand how a magic system works, it's a little bit difficult with this one. But I did really enjoy this. I think I give both these books in the series 5 out of 5 stars. The romance, I can't. It's swoony and I love it. It's so good. I don't know what else to say. I love this story. You guys really need to read it. I really like it. I love it. And it's a retelling of 1001 Nights, which is kind of like Aladdin-y, and there's like a magic carpet, and I love it. It's really good. Read it. Then I read The Black Key by Amy Ewing, which is the third and final book in the Lone City trilogy, and I gave all 3 of these books 5 out of 5 stars. They were just fantastic. If you guys are in the mood for a dystopian, this is definitely what you need to read. Basically, this is it's a dystopian society where the lower class women become surrogates for the upper class women, and there's a little bit of twists and turns in there, and a very dystopian class system type thing, where the lower class is very, very poor and the upper class is very, very rich, and there's not really much of a middle class going on. And the main characters are just amazing. If you enjoy Kira Cass's writing style with the Selection series, how it's got a backstory of dystopian, but there's romantic elements, and it's very easy and quick and flows very, very well. They have very similar writing styles. The stories are not really the same other than the dystopian background aspect to it, but I think the writing styles are very similar. So if you enjoyed Kira Cass's writing style, I think you would really like this. It's a very good story, and I highly enjoyed it. I read all 3 of these books in one sitting. The third one, Black Key, I read in 2 sittings, but it was because I had to go to work. It wasn't because I did not want to put this book down, guys. I did not want to go to work at all that day, but I did it, and I read it that night, and it was just fantastic. I loved it. These are great books. Highly recommend this series. Then I read You Know Me Well by David Levithan and Nina LaCour. This is an Own Voices queer read. Our 2 main characters are both queer, and they go to high school together, but they never really talked. They actually meet for the first time at the first day of Pride at a bar, and in the beginning it feels like it's going to be like one of those one-night adventure type things, and it doesn't end up being that way, which is a little bit of a bummer, but I did enjoy this. I enjoyed the romances that this story had and how real and raw the relationships were, but when this book was nominated for the LGBTQIA+ Young Adult Booktube Awards, and we had that live show the other day, and the judges did mention that they felt the representation was definitely lacking in this story, so I do recognize that, and I think you guys should keep that in mind if you do decide to read this story, that especially with one character that was very overly flamboyant and very stereotypical for the queer community. So there are some problems with this story, especially because it's an Own Voices read. It's a little bit disappointing, but I enjoyed the story as much as I can for a contemporary. Then I picked up Unblemished by Sarah Ella, and this is a like portal fantasy where you kind of go through a portal in our world to get to a different world, and I liked that aspect of it. I liked the love triangle. I think Sarah Ella did a really good job of inserting a love triangle into this, kind of doing it the right way, and but other than that, it kind of fell flat for me. I feel like there were so many characters, I was kind of confused. I really didn't understand the world. I connected. Some people told me that they couldn't connect with the motivation of our main character, but I really did, and I liked, because basically her main character, her mom is missing, and she has to go find her. Very City of Bones. I just realized that. very City of Bones, because these are both urban fantasies, and then it kind of turns into like a portal fantasy. But anyway, yeah, it's very City of Bones in the beginning. So, but I enjoyed this, and I think that there are things that I didn't enjoy about it, but most people that I know, most of my peers really liked this book. So I think it was definitely a unique world. So there are good and bad with this one. For me, it was just kind of middle of the road, but I know a lot of people really enjoyed this story. Then I picked up with Malice by Eileen Cook. This is a mystery thriller that was nominated for the mystery thriller young adult booktube awards, and I didn't like this one. It was very popular with the judges for the Young Adult Booktube Awards, but for me, I'm a huge follower of the Amanda Knox story, especially when it was like when she was going through the trials in Italy and all of that stuff. When it was very big in the news, I followed the Amanda Knox story like religiously, and I've watched all of the documentaries and everything about Amanda Knox I was very into and following that story, and this had too many similarities for me. It had the Italian lover and murder, and just like it was just too much. So, but I'll give you the basic rundown. This is about a girl who goes on vacation to Italy with her school, and her and her friend get into a car wreck, and her friend dies, but the Italian police think that it's murder. But our main character, when she wakes up in the hospital, she doesn't remember anything from the past 6 weeks. So she doesn't even remember going to Italy. She doesn't remember leaving for Italy. She doesn't remember anything 6 weeks prior to basically the week of the accident. And because of that, we're really left with kind of like an unreliable narrator. There's a lot of other characters who are very unreliable. And then we have like input from the police, their police transcripts, from input from, people like our main character's family and the victim's family and their friends at school. And so I thought that was really interesting. Another thing that really was like super close to our own world is there is a woman in here who is basically Nancy Grace. Like there are transcripts of her television show, and it's called like True Crime with Nina Grimes or something like that, and she's basically Nancy Grace. And it's like I just thought that there wasn't enough individuality or uniqueness with this story. I just thought it was too close to our real world things that we see, and I just really didn't enjoy that about this story. But it is a good mystery. I didn't guess the ending until the very, very end. It wasn't too out there for me. It made a lot of sense, and I liked the way that it ended, but because of all the similarities to Amanda Knox and our own world, it wasn't that good for me. And then I read Queen of Shadows and Empire of Storms back to back. It took me 3 days to read these. I need to read them for the fantasy live show for the Young Adult Booktube Awards, which is just in a couple of days. It's on Saturday, I believe, February 4th. And I don't want to say that I didn't enjoy these, because I did. I enjoy the Throne of Glass series. I enjoy Sarah J. Maas's writing style and her storytelling, and how very Game of Thrones this is. But for me to read them as fast as I did, it was a lot to take in. Like, these books are huge, and there are a lot of characters, and there's a lot of plot developments and plot lines that are weaving in and out of each other, and there's a lot of characters who have different alliances to different people, and then those alliances change, and it's a lot of things and plot points and characters and things to keep track of. And so for me to read these as fast as I did, it made them a lot less enjoyable. I highly recommend to read these slowly. The way that I usually read big honking books like this is I'll read like a third, and then I'll read like a short, easy to read novel, and then I'll read another third of the book, and then an easy read novel, and then the last third, and so on and so forth, with other large books. And so that's easier for me to soak in the information and process what's going on than it is for me to read like 1,300 pages of the same story back to back for 3 days straight. It was very hard for me to get through them and process everything that was going on because I was rushing. So while this is a good series, and I did really enjoy it, and I do recognize that a lot of people are unhappy with the lack of diversity and the lack of representation in these stories, I see that, I understand that, and I totally get that, and I think Sarah J. Maas needs to do a better job of that, but I didn't enjoy it mostly because I was rushing through it. But the story is good, and the characters are good, and I enjoy the romances, and where the story is going. I'm really excited for the last book in this series to come out. I think I might actually reread Empire of Storms before the 6th book in this series comes out, so I can just like refresh my memory, because I know I just didn't have enough time to process them, and it was a lot. It was a lot for me to read these. I think the next couple of books that I read are going to be short and easy to read and happy-go-lucky and a lot of graphic novels because I need to recover from these because it was just a lot of work to get through them. All right, guys, that's everything I have for you for my January wrap up. I hope that you enjoyed it. It was a crazy month for me, and I'm really proud of myself that I actually got through 15 books. I'm actually in the middle of Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo at the moment, but I'm just barely, very, very, very at the beginning of it, so I'm not even going to mention that one. But it will be my February wrap up, my weekly wrap up. I'm going to move to weekly wrap ups this month, I promise. I was just too busy to do any videos this month. So, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys would like to watch my most recent video, you can click right here, or if you would like to subscribe, you can click right here. That would make me oh so happy. I'd really appreciate it. And I will see you in my next video. Bye!